Companies keep saying they can't find people. News keeps talking about labor shortages. Business owners complain that nobody wants to work anymore. So why are millions of people struggling to get their very first job? And at the exact same time, you hear the opposite from actual people.
I've applied to 200 jobs.
I can't even get an interview.
I have a degree and internships, and still nothing.
For a long time, this made zero sense to me. How can companies be desperate for workers while thousands of qualified people can't land their first real job? So I stopped reading the headlines and started digging. Labor reports, hiring data, research papers, and a lot of real conversations from people stuck in the middle of it. What I found wasn't really a story about unemployment. It's a story about something narrower and more uncomfortable. The first step into a career is quietly disappearing. Look at the numbers. As of early 2026, recent college graduates aged 22 to 27 had an unemployment rate of about 5.6%. The overall rate sat around 4.2%. That gap used to run the other way. Now, new grads are worse off than the average worker. Think about how this used to work. You finished school. You didn't know much yet. That was normal. Your first job was basically paid practice. Companies hired beginners because they understood beginners eventually turn into experienced people. Everybody had a first day. Somebody had to teach them. It wasn't perfect, but it worked for decades. Now, open any job site and search entry level. Read the requirements. 3 years of experience. 5 years. 5 different tools, industry knowledge preferred, sometimes even management experience. Studies have found that roughly 1/3 of jobs labeled entry-level still ask for several years of prior experience. In technology, the percentage is even higher. Some studies put it above 60%. If this is entry-level, what the hell comes before it? People joke about it all the time. The joke stopped being funny a while ago, because the system now asks for experience in order to give you the experience. It's like telling someone they need a driver's license before they're allowed to learn how to drive. I kept seeing the same complaint from completely different places. A developer in Canada, a marketing grad in Germany, an accountant in the US, a designer in Australia. Different countries, different fields, same sentence. Nobody wants to hire beginners anymore. One person wrote, "It used to be, we give training. Now it's, we need a pre-trained person." Not because every company is like that, but because enough of them recognize their own situation in it. So what actually changed? At first, I assumed it was AI. Everyone talks about AI, but the deeper I looked, the clearer it became that AI is just the newest layer on a much older problem. The real shift started years earlier. It started with training. Imagine you run a company. You hire a fresh graduate. For the first few months, they're not fully productive. Someone has to show them how things work, check their work, answer the same questions 10 times. That's an investment. Now, another company already spent half a year training that same person. Who do you hire? Obviously the one who's already useful. Faster results, fewer mistakes, less babysitting. For one company, this is completely rational. The problem is, every company started thinking the same way. Instead of creating experienced workers, they started competing for the ones that already existed. You can only harvest the same field for so long if nobody is planting new seeds. Then, hiring itself changed. Most people still picture a human opening their resume, reading it, and deciding. That's not how it works for a lot of jobs anymore. Your first interview is often software. Around 98% of Fortune 500 companies now use applicant tracking systems. These systems filter by keywords and years of experience before a person ever sees most applications. But the bigger change is simpler: volume. Remote work became normal. Applying became ridiculously easy. One click on LinkedIn and you've applied to 20 jobs before lunch. Everyone else can do the same thing. 15 years ago, a junior role might get a few dozen applications. Today, the same role can attract hundreds. Surveys and platform data show that many people now send out well over 100 applications, sometimes 200 or 300, before landing a professional role. A decade ago, the numbers were a fraction of that. You're a recruiter with one open seat and hundreds of resumes. What do? You filter hard. Prioritize people who already have experience. Look for specific keywords. Stop reading after the first couple hundred. For the person trying to get their first job, it still feels like rejection after rejection. Then AI arrived and made the problem a little sharper. AI isn't wiping out whole professions overnight. What's happening is quieter. A few years ago, a marketing team might hire a junior to write product descriptions, summarize reports, do basic research. Now, existing employees can do a lot of that with AI help. Not perfectly, but well enough that the company doesn't need as many pure beginners. Same pattern shows up in software, design, support, finance. The low-stakes practice work that used to exist inside junior roles is shrinking. What's left often requires more judgment than it used to, so the doorway gets narrower again. AI didn't invent this situation. It just added another filter on top of one that was already tightening. And then there are ghost jobs, a job posting that stays online even though the company isn't actually hiring right now. Sometimes they're collecting resumes for later. Sometimes the listing just never got taken down. Sometimes an internal person already has the role. Multiple studies put the share of these somewhere between roughly 18 and 27% of online postings, about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. Not every listing is fake, but enough of them are that people can spend weeks applying to jobs that were never real openings. That helps explain the biggest contradiction. The news says unemployment is low. Companies say they're hiring. Yet a lot of recent graduates feel completely stuck. Those two things can both be true. The unemployment rate counts how many people don't have jobs. It doesn't measure how hard it is for someone to get their very first professional job. Recent data also shows that around 42% of recent college graduates are underemployed, working in jobs that don't actually require a degree. That's the highest level since the early pandemic years.
I keep getting rejected almost immediately. These are entry-level jobs, often internships and grad schemes. I have a master's degree.
For a lot of people, the hard part isn't doing the work. It's getting the chance to prove they can. None of the individual decisions are crazy. Preferring experienced people makes sense. Using software to handle 1,000 applications makes sense. Using AI to get more done with the same team makes sense. Put all of them together and something else happens. The entrance gets smaller. Not because the jobs vanish completely, but because the first real step becomes harder to reach. And that matters more than it looks. Today's beginners are tomorrow's senior people, managers, business owners. Every experienced worker started as someone who didn't know the job yet. If fewer people get that first chance, where do the experienced workers come from in 10 years? That's the quiet paradox. Everyone wants people who already know what they're doing. Somebody still has to teach the next ones. Otherwise, we're solving today's hiring problem by creating a bigger one later. A lot of people feel like they're doing everything right and still getting nowhere. Not because this generation is somehow less capable, because the path that used to exist has become more complicated than most of us noticed. So the useful question isn't only, why aren't companies hiring? It's a bigger one. When exactly did experience stop being the destination and start being the requirement just to get in the door? Thanks for watching.